So get this. Our story kicks off in a world that got a major system update called Awakening. In some frozen wasteland, a bunch of overpowered dudes gathered around a place called the Death Den. It was a top-tier, S-rank dungeon, home to some seriously ancient evil. This bad boy was the very first dungeon to pop up on planet Azure and had a perfect no-win streak for decades. The entrance was basically a boneyard, decorated with the skeletons of countless masters who tried and failed. But today, today was different. Some absolute mad lad named Suing decided to solo the Death Den, and after a ridiculously epic fight, he actually won, having just iced the dungeon's god-tier final boss. But as he staggered out, totally spent, he wasn't greeted with a parade and confetti. Nope, he got jumped by the very guys who used to be his bros. They had him surrounded, and they weren't there to chat. One of them sneered, telling Suing to quit struggling and just hand over the divine loot he'd just scored. Another one chimed in, declaring that Suing's fate was totally sealed. He sarcastically called him a hero of humanity and promised a quick trip to the afterlife if he'd just surrender. The nerve! Suing, his body still crackling with leftover boss fight energy, looked them over. The penny finally dropped. He realized they just waited for him to do all the dirty work so they could swipe the powerful artifact. He had to ask, seriously, guys? Was this your brilliant scheme from the get-go? From the pack of backstabbers, a bleach-blonde pretty boy named Jang Tang strutted forward. He whipped out his sword, which started crackling with some flashy blue lightning. Total show-off. He put on his best dramatic face to confront his so-called friend. He demanded the divine artifact, even trying to play the friendship card by offering to let Suing live if he coughed it up. With a smug grin, Zhang Tong bragged that he'd just snuff out what little power Suing had left anyway. Gripping his own blazing red sword, Suing could only lament how incredibly dense he'd been. He'd treated these clowns like brothers since they were practically in diapers. They'd fought side by side for years, and he never once suspected they were a bunch of venomous snakes. Drowning in the bitter taste of betrayal, he decided if he was going down, he wasn't going quietly. He raised his weapon, and the divine artifact unleashed a colossal eruption of red and purple energy. The resulting explosion was absolutely massive. Standing there defiantly in the middle of it all, Suing laid down the challenge to his former crew. You want this ring of Tao Defiance? Then come and get it. But let's be real, I doubt any of you chumps are even close to being strong enough. That insane power flex left his ex-allies completely stunned and speechless. One of Zhang Tong's goons got impatient, yelling, "What are we waiting for? Let's just gank him already." But Zhang Tong told him to cool his jets, trying to warn Suming not to go full throttle with that overpowered artifact. But as the stare-down dragged on, a new challenger literally dropped in from the sky, calling out Suming's name. He looked up, totally baffled, as a pink-haired girl named Xiaoman zipped toward him. And boom, she latched onto him with a hug that could crack concrete. She explained she heard some haters were plotting against him and rushed over because she was worried, but Suming just waved it off. He told her to chill out, assuring her these chumps were just EXP fodder for him. Even so, he couldn't help but wonder how his enemies pinpointed his location so perfectly. As his brain was buffering, Zhang Tong flashed a super villainous smirk. In that exact moment, Suming felt a sharp, unwelcome sensation in his back. Yep, Xiaoman had just shivved him. She then whispered the ultimate plot twist. She was the one who snitched on him. Our boy was shook. Suming just stared, completely floored, as a glowing red magic circle lit up on the very hand she used to stab him. His brain short-circuited trying to figure out why she, of all people, would pull a fast one. Across the field, Zhang Tang started cackling, declaring that the final piece of his evil puzzle was now in place. He then roared for the activation of his super special imprisonment formation. Instantly, a massive, blood-red sigil materialized in the sky right above Suming's head. He was totally trapped. From the fresh wound, glowing red chains burst out, coiling around his body and hitting the off switch on his powers. He recognized the curse mark as Ren Xiaoman's, and it hit him this girl had been planning to backstab him for ages. Zhang Tong then swaggered over to Xian, casually throwing an arm around her. He mockingly explained that this little cage was a custom job, specially designed for Suming and guaranteed to block him from using any of his awesome powers. Xian then added cruelly that she was, and always had been, with Zhang Tong. She coldly informed Suming his only job was to be their pawn, all thanks to his super rare 9-star talent. They basically just needed him to be their errand boy and fetch the divine artifact for them. Betrayed and totally played. Suming just collapsed to his knees, letting out a roar of pure, unfiltered rage. With our hero bound and nerfed, Zhang Tang ordered his minions to take him out and secure the legendary loot. The lackeys charged forward, their weapons glowing with malicious intent. But just as they were about to land the final hit, the ground itself violently erupted, and a massive skeletal hand punched its way out. It was followed by a whole tidal wave of skeletal warriors who jumped in front of the attackers, forming a bony shield around Suming. He could only stare in shock, wondering who the heck his new skeleton crew was. And just in the nick of time, a wild purple-haired waifu in a mysterious cloak appears. Suming totally knew her. It was Ji Yao, the resident goth girl necromancer, who dramatically touched down right between him and the bad guys. She was rocking a seriously OP-looking staff and gave him the classic, "Don't you dare give up on me" pep talk. She was dead set on making sure these clowns didn't get their grubby hands on the shiny artifact, but Zhang Tong just laughed in her face. He basically called her another piece of cannon fodder queuing up for a dirt nap. Then he started his villain monologue, bragging that with his army of so-called masters, not even the server admin could save Su Ming's sorry butt. His goons immediately got into a slap fight with Ji Yao's spooky, scary skeletons, which really ticked off Zhang Tong. So he went full rage mode, charging straight at Ji Yao and screaming that anyone blocking his path was getting deleted. While Ji Yao was busy brawling, one of Zhang Tong's lackeys helpfully shouted, "Hey, watch your six." Surprise, surprise, it was the oldest trick in the book. The warning was just a big old distraction. And like a total noob, she actually turned, looking all shocked, right as Zhang Tong zipped in and swung his sparkly lightning-covered weapon at her face. He even had the nerve to say, "No hard feelings, classmate," as he did it. Meanwhile, Su Ming, still tied up and useless, could only do the one thing protagonists in his situation do: watch in slow motion and scream her name like a damsel in distress. With Ji Yao officially down for the count, Zhang Tong saw his golden opportunity. He strolled over to Su Ming and was all like, "Aw, you care about someone else? How cute. Anyway, it's your turn to get wrecked." Then, bam, he shoved his glowy blue shiv right into Su Ming's chest and leaned in for a little chat. Zhang Tong offered him a totally generous final choice. Hand over the artifact, and he might think about not finishing the job. But oh no, Su Ming was about to pull a classic protagonist move. He grabbed onto those magical chains, channeling his inner drama queen. With blood. Spilling from his mouth, he gave his betrayers the ultimate stink eye of pure, unadulterated rage. He called them absolute monsters as some seriously edgy red and black energy started swirling around him. You know what that means. In a last-ditch effort, Su Ming decided to hit the big red self-destruct button, announcing his move like a shonen hero. God-tier technique. Annihilation Burst. A massive, world-ending kaboom went off, sending Zhang Tong and Ren Xiaoman scrambling for cover like total cowards. When the dust settled, everything was eerily quiet, and there was Su Ming, looking like he'd just gone 10 rounds with a meat grinder. On his last legs, he reached out a shaky hand, whispering Ji Yao's name like he was in a soap opera. He did the dramatic crawl over to her, cradling her broken body and overflowing with man-tears and regret. He sobbed about why she'd even bother saving a loser like him, but Ji Yao just gave him this serene, peaceful smile. She weakly reached up to caress his face, telling him that, hey, if this was the grand finale, they might as well check out together. And just as his health bar was hitting 0, Su Ming suddenly got a final, inexplicable power-up. His legendary sword just poofed into existence and dramatically stabbed the ground right in front of him. Talk about a cliffhanger. Cradling Ji Yao's lifeless form, he spat out a final, venomous curse at his so-called friends. Su Ming, the legendary god slayer, roared an oath to the heavens. If fate gave him a do-over, he'd hunt down Ren Xiaoman and Zhang Tong and turn them into fine red mist. His backstabbing buddies just stared, their tiny brains struggling to compute, and then, the single light bulb in Zhang Tang's head finally flickered on. He'd figured out Su Ming's epic, "if I can't have it, no one can master" plan. The mad lad was actually going to yeet the divine artifact into the afterlife with him, dragging it straight down into the Death Den's abyss, just to spite them. His final vow delivered, Su Ming basically taunted them, "You want this shiny thing? Come and get it in the hereafter." And with that, he took a swan dive off the cliff, holding Ji Yao tight, plummeting into the swirling chaos below. But clutched in his hand, the ring of Tao Defiance erupted in a golden flashbang of holy moly level light. Everything went white. Su Ming's hand went slack, and it looked like game over for our hero. But wait, his consciousness flickered back on, and he wasn't in some spooky abyss. but staring up at a painfully blue sky and a school building that gave him a serious case of déjà vu. Totally bamboozled, his brain did a full-on blue screen when a voice crackled over a PA system. Some hype man was announcing the results of the 127th Awakening ceremony at Xuanjing First Academy. Apparently, some kid named Wang Cheng had just hit the jackpot and awakened, but his big prize was the Enchanter class, the one for glorified arts and crafters, not fighters. Meanwhile, Suming, now back in his scrawny teenage body, was just standing there in a sea of awkward teens. He caught some gossip about the school's trash tier luck this year, and that's when it hit him. Awakening ceremony. That old, familiar feeling washed over him as the horrifying, glorious truth dawned. He'd actually time-traveled. He was 18 years old again, right back on the day of his very own awakening ceremony. It's regression time, baby. So there Suming stood, a god-slaying veteran in a high schooler's body, and the memories of this exact day came flooding back in glorious 4K. He spotted Wang Cheng, the dude everyone used to call Fatty. Yep, that's him. He remembered clear as day that Wang Cheng got the Enchanter class last time too. Okay, so definitely not a dream. To double-check if his future vision was still working, he ran a quick mental scan of the next poor souls in line. Let's see. Li Xiangyang is about to pop off as a 2-star warrior. Chen Yu's gonna be a big ol' dud, and Song Li will snag that sweet battle mage class. And like clockwork, it all played out. Li Xiangyang started celebrating like he just won the lottery after awakening as a warrior. Next up was Qian Yu, who totally bombed his awakening and started ugly crying about it. He was followed by Song Li, who actually managed to snag the battle mage class. With every single event playing out exactly like his memories, any shred of doubt Suming had was completely obliterated. A cocky smirk spread across his face as it finally sank in that he was, in fact, back in the game. That smirk instantly vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fury as the memory of those backstabbers, Yung Tang and Ren Xiaoman, burned in his mind. He could feel it. This second chance was a gift from the heavens, a golden ticket to rewrite history and serve up some long-overdue payback. His revenge plotting was rudely interrupted by a collective gasp from the crowd. Up on stage, a much younger, more punchable version of Jiang Tong was having his big moment. And of course, he was wrapped in an obnoxiously over-the-top purple aura. The announcer, practically losing his mind, bellowed that Jiang Tong had awakened a rare hidden combat class, Demon Puppet Warrior. And get this, with a ridiculously powerful 8-star innate attribute. The students were buzzing like a hive of hornets. They all chattered about how a broken awakening like that was totally expected from the golden boy of the prestigious Zhang family. Hearing all the praise, Suming could only glare at his future arch-nemesis with an ice-cold stare, a stare filled with burning hatred, while the announcer continued to drool over the school's new prodigy. Just then, Suming felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around and his jaw nearly hit the floor. It was a young and perfectly healthy Gi Yao, rocking her school uniform. She told him she'd been looking everywhere for him, then, seeing his shell-shocked face, asked if he was okay. Overwhelmed, he quickly pulled himself together and blurted out that he just wanted to congratulate her in advance. This, understandably, left Gi Yao completely baffled. She asked what in the world he was congratulating her for, as the brutal image of her dying in his arms flashed before his eyes. A genuine, warm smile finally broke through the darkness on his face. He just told her it was nothing, and that she'd figure it out soon enough. Then, filled with a profound sense of relief, he added, "It's just really good to see you again." And right on cue, the announcer shouted the next name, Gi Yao. Startled, she quickly made her way to the stage. She reached out and placed her hand on the massive celestial stele. The giant, ancient artifact, practically humming with crackling blue energy. The moment her fingers touched its surface, an insane surge of power erupted from the stone, completely engulfing her in a pillar of light. The announcer's voice cracked with disbelief as he screamed that Ji Yao had awakened a hidden combat class, Necromancer, with a powerful 7-star attribute. The rest of the students were left completely speechless, their minds totally blown. The whole place was buzzing like a hive on fire. Meanwhile, Suming just watched with a calm, all-knowing smirk. He was thinking, "Yep, everything's going according to my master plan. Now, it was his time to shine." The announcer finally called out for Suming. As he casually strolled towards the stage, Ji tossed him a "good luck." The rest of the students, not so much. They were all whispering that a third hidden class was a pipe dream, especially for a charity case like Suming. Okay, hold up, time for a quick world-building interlude. We're on planet Azure, inside the Dragon Nation, a place totally run by the superpowered Awakened. Decades ago, the whole awakening gig started. Since that day, every person who hits the big 1 to 8 goes through a ceremony to become one of these powerhouses. These folks completely flipped the world on its head, with the juice to bend reality and get filthy rich. But hey, all that awesome power doesn't come for free. The Awakened have to constantly battle endless horrors, facing down vicious monsters and crawling through terrifying, monster-infested dungeons. As he moseyed on up to the giant celestial crystal, Su-ming took a little trip down memory lane. He remembered being an orphan, scraping by on stipends and scholarships. On the day of his first awakening ceremony, the heavens pretty much handed him the ultimate cheat code. A ridiculously epic light show descended, and he awakened a super rare 9-star innate attribute, plus a legendary class called the God Slayer. Now, back on the stage in his second life, he was ready to rewrite his own story. He reached his hand out to the awakening artifact, vowing that today, he was going to make every last one of them see him for the boss he was. The moment he touched it, a colossal blast of purple and pink energy absolutely erupted, creating a mind-blowing spectacle in the sky. The announcer just stared, completely dumbfounded. He was probably wondering if this insane power surge meant a new genius with a 9-star attribute, or maybe even something crazier. G and the rest of the peanut gallery were equally stunned, their jaws practically unhinged. Su-ming got ready, expecting that same old familiar rush of power from his first time around. But this time, something was way off script. A glowing blue sigil flared to life on his chest, and out of it popped the divine artifact he had died with, the Ring of Tao Defiance, materializing out of thin air. He was completely floored. He realized the ring had somehow hitched a ride back in time with him. Before he could even wrap his head around that, another totally unexpected thing happened. A seriously weird sensation began to spread through his body, and just like that, a holographic screen materialized out of thin air. A system notification chimed in, announcing the Ultimate God Slayer class system was successfully locking onto him. It then declared his awakening a total success and that the system had hooked him up with a brand new class. But hold on, this wasn't his old class. He'd been blessed with something way, way bigger. A mythic class called the Sword God. Su-ming could only gawk at the screen, his jaw practically on the floor. Was a mythic class even a real thing? And what was up with this ridiculously overpowered title he just landed? Meanwhile, the insane crimson energy exploding from Su-ming's awakening had totally stunned the crowd, even the announcer. He was completely floored, wondering what kind of class could possibly kick up a storm like this. Down in the crowd, the students were buzzing, trying to figure it all out. One dude nervously piped up, worried that if it was a non-combat class, Su-ming would be totally screwed. But Youngtang immediately shot that idea down, arguing that with a light show that epic, there was no way it was some lame lifestyle class. Still, as he stared, a bead of sweat trickled down his face. The sheer pressure from Su-ming's energy was insane, so intense he was practically frozen in place. And Su-ming? He was just chilling in the middle of this energy hurricane, casually scrolling through the deets on the golden panel floating in front of him. Yup, it was confirmed. His new awakened class was Sword God, a major upgrade from the God Slayer of his past life. He tapped the system interface, which ran a quick ID scan and beeped, confirming his identity, Su-ming. And then, it pulled up his brand spanking new status window. His class was listed as Sword God, and, get this, he had a golden tier talent, called Universal Ascension, which gave him the absolutely broken ability to level up or evolve literally anything. Su-ming's brain just short-circuited. He quickly realized a golden talent was a whole tier above the legendary 9-star class he'd awakened in his last life. A cocky grin spread across his face as it hit him. This new power was going to blow that old god's class out of the water. Hyped to see his new bag of tricks, he eagerly swiped open the skill interface, and his hype immediately flatlined. The skill screen was completely blank, showing 0 progress and just one single message. No abilities have been awakened. Su-ming saw red. He practically grabbed the holographic panel with both hands, screaming in his head, how in the world does a golden rank talent not come with a single freaking skill? But while Su-ming was having his meltdown, the crowd was getting antsy, totally confused by the awkward silence. Finally, the announcer's voice boomed out, asking if he was, done with his awakening yet. Su-ming was glaring daggers at the totally empty skill interface. He couldn't wrap his head around how he'd landed a supposed god-tier class and ended up with 0 abilities. Was the system seriously trolling him right now? Just then, a new message popped up on the panel, basically saying, "Alright, we heard your whining, and guidance will now resume." A new prompt told him to check out the ring of Tao Defiance floating right in his face. Totally baffled, he stared at the ring as it started to pulse with light. Then the system chimed in, announcing it had successfully ID'd the divine artifact. The second that ring got identified, the system panel lit up like a supernova, and a ridiculously huge pillar of golden light exploded from where Suming was standing, blasting straight up into the heavens. A massive shockwave ripped outwards, forcing the announcer, who also happened to be the Academy's principal, to dig his heels in. Way, way up above the celestial stele, a giant, glowing, multicolored star appeared out of thin air with the number 10 smack dab in the middle. The principal's eyes just about popped out of his skull. He started sputtering, recognizing the sign for a 10-star innate attribute. His voice suddenly boomed over the microphone, announcing that Suming had awakened a 10-star hidden class, Swordmaster. The entire crowd went absolutely nuts, screaming about the heaven-defying talent of a 10-star attribute, a level that only the nation's absolute top dogs ever reached. Zhang Tong just stood there, his jaw on the floor, while some other kid muttered that he thought Zhang Tong's 8-star awakening was already bonkers, but Suming just went and dropped a fully maxed-out 10-star attribute on them. The principal, grinning from ear to ear, declared this was a legendary year for the Academy. Not only had they seen multiple hidden classes pop up, but now they had a chosen one with a 10-star attribute. He did admit that, yeah, the Swordmaster class wasn't exactly top tier, but with a 10-star innate talent backing it up, Suming's future potential was basically infinite. And as a reward, the principal announced he'd personally gift Suming a complete set of cultivation-aiding items. But not everyone was buying the hype. Murmurs of disappointment started to ripple through the crowd. A few students called it a total waste of talent, explaining that Swordmaster was a certified bottom-tier class. They went on to say it was just a mediocre, jack-of-all-trades class, forcing you to train in both ranged and close combat, splitting your focus between physical and magical attacks, which basically made it the textbook definition of a weak, underpowered class. The other students absolutely lost it, cackling at his rotten luck, roasting him for getting a 10-star talent only to be stuck with such a trash-tier class. A couple of brave souls tried to defend him, arguing that if he grinded hard enough, a Swordmaster could actually be a decent damage dealer. And with Su Ming's god-tier talent, he was practically guaranteed to make it work. But the haters shot that down immediately, arguing the class makes you work twice as hard for half the reward and that he'd be lucky to even survive a noob-level dungeon. Up on the stage, Su Ming heard every last bit of their trash talk. He tilted his head just a bit, his eyes hidden in shadow, thinking how everyone was writing off his Swordmaster class as pure garbage. As the peanut gallery kept on whispering, Guy came running up to Su Ming with a huge grin. She hyped him up with a big congrats, and Su Ming returned the favor. Guy Yao then told him to just ignore all the clueless haters, because snagging a 10-star talent was absolutely insane. She admitted that, yeah, the Swordmaster class was kinda weak in the early game, but she was totally sure that with his level of talent, it would be a non-issue. Su Ming gave her a warm smile and a thank you, letting her know their little jabs weren't even on his radar. Then he dropped a cryptic hint, saying that them underestimating him was exactly what he was hoping for, which left Zhao completely baffled. Their little chat was cut short when the announcer called up the next student. The crowd went wild as Ren Xiaoman, the school's untouchable queen bee, made her way to the front. Zhang Tong was right there, cheering her on. Guy marveled at her insane popularity, but Su Ming just stayed quiet. Instead of sticking around for the show, Su Ming just turned around and started walking off. Guy called out, totally bewildered, reminding him the ceremony wasn't even over. Su Ming replied with an ice-cold tone, not even glancing back, that he just wasn't interested. As he made his exit, a flood of agonizing memories from his past life came crashing back. He remembered clear as day how Ren Xiaoman played him for a fool, only to backstab him and take him out without a second thought. He recalled the oath he swore as he bled out, hardening his resolve to get payback in this new life. Later, Su Ming was strolling through the city, thinking how the world looked exactly the same as he remembered. And yet, he knew some things were fundamentally different this time around. Besides his new class, he pulled up his system interface and found a new skill called Total Concealment. This absolutely broken, legendary tier skill let him hide or completely fabricate information about his equipment, class, and even his other skills. He instantly recognized it as one of the 4 legendary skills he'd carried over from his past life. That thought sparked another memory, the glowing ring of Tao Defiance. He stared at his hands, completely floored. It finally clicked. The divine artifact had actually followed him back through time. As Suming was still processing this, the system panel flared to life once more. A notification popped up. Loading divine artifact. As the ring began to integrate, a fresh message flashed on screen. Turns out, Suming had inherited a piece of the skill set from his old gods class. He just stared, his mind completely blown. How is this even possible? He wondered. I'm a sword god now. How can I have skills from my old class? Just then, a detailed status screen materialized out of thin air, displaying his name. Suming. Level 1, with some pretty balanced base stats. His class was confirmed, the one-of-a-kind mythic sword god. And his talent? Universal Ascension. Now that's what I'm talking about. The skills section was now populated with 4 insane abilities: Godslayer's Blade, Total Concealment, Shadow Step, and Insightful Eye. Armed with this game-changing info, Suming's mind started racing, piecing together a plan. An old saying popped into his head: an innocent man with a priceless treasure is just asking for trouble, to keep from getting used by every schemer out there. And since he was still a total weakling, he knew he had to play it smart. While his 10-star talent was a giant, glowing beacon he couldn't hide, he decided he absolutely had to keep his true mythic class under wraps, the Sword God. He swore to himself that he'd nail this second chance and not screw it up like last time. From his past life, he knew for a fact that the beginner dungeon challenge was set to drop on day 2, right after the awakening ceremony. With his future knowledge and OP skills, Suming was basically laughing. The beginner dungeon was going to be a total cakewalk. His plan was simple: level up faster than everyone else and snag all the best gear. And to pull that off, he was going to beeline it straight for the dungeon's hardest boss from the get-go. But first things first, he needed a decent weapon. Meanwhile, across town, in a swanky room at the top of a skyscraper called Palace, a totally different drama was unfolding. Zhang Tong and Ren Xian were kicking back together. Ren Xiaoman playfully jabbed at Zhang Tong for whisking her off to a place like this right after the ceremony. Zhang Tong, clearly annoyed, shot back, telling her not to even mention the ceremony, whining about how Suming totally stole his spotlight. But Ren Xiaoman was already playing 4D chess. She told him not to get his panties in a twist, explaining that even if Suming was just a swordmaster, they could still use him. His awakening stats were off the charts. She promised him Suming was a golden goose they could pluck later. Hook, line, and sinker. Yungtang leaned in, asking what she had in mind. Ren Xiaoman flashed a wicked little grin and pulled up something on her phone. As Zhang Tong's eyes scanned the screen, his scowl melted away, replaced by wide-eyed shock. With an ice-cold, calculating glint in her eyes, Ren Xiaoman laid out her brilliant scheme. She was absolutely certain that if she dangled just the right carrot, Suming would bite, and then, just like last time, they could twist him around their little finger. Following their little script, Suming rocked up to a colossal skyscraper, a veritable mega-mall for all things pointy and deadly. He hopped in an elevator and shot up to the 12th floor, where an eager employee from the Weapons Emporium was waiting to greet him. Strolling through the place, like he owned it, he clocked that the joint was crawling with newbie awakened students, all gearing up for their first baby dungeon trial. He couldn't help but overhear some of them whining about being broke, realizing they'd have to grind dungeons for ages just for a half-decent weapon. Suddenly, Suming's gaze was pulled toward a massive crowd huddled around one particular display case. They were all drooling over a ridiculously glowing blue sword, dramatically named the Tyrant's Frost Blade, a supposed diamond-rank weapon, allegedly forged by some master-class greatsword player. The crowd of rookies was absolutely losing their minds over its supposed power, which could, get this, supposedly freeze the blood right in a monster's veins. But their jaws dropped for a second time at the price tag, a cool 1 million advent coins. As they all gushed over it, Suming just let out a little smirk. He remembered from his past life that this shiny piece of junk was a complete fake. And the clown selling it? Yeah, he was going to get busted for fraud eventually. His internal monologue was cut short by a sharp voice. He turned to see a seriously well-dressed woman, with short, silver hair, flanked by 2 absolute units for bodyguards. She cut right to the chase, asking if he was Suming. He shot back, asking who wanted to know. The woman introduced herself as Zhang Lan, the vice director of the Zhang Anan Group, no less, and coolly handed him her business card. Suming snagged the card, giving it a quick glance. "Don't think we've met," he said, completely unimpressed. Zhang Lan totally blew off his comment and, loud enough for the whole room to hear, announced that on behalf of the Jonggun group, she would be covering his entire shopping spree for the day. Then she leaned in, saying she hoped he could do her a little favor. When Su Ming asked what kind of favor, she just nodded to one of her goons, who pulled out a photo. The picture showed a young, smiling girl, but her eyes were mysteriously obscured, and she was completely surrounded by a field of white flowers. Zhanglan explained this was her little sister, Zhang Yuning. Turns out, she went to his school and was a freshly minted awakener. She came clean that she'd already done a background check on him and knew all about his 10-star talent. Her logic was, with his kind of power, the newbie dungeon would be an absolute cakewalk. After pointing out that only fresh-faced awakeners could get in, she finally got to the point. She wanted him to play bodyguard for her sister and carry her through the trial safely. Su Ming didn't even hesitate, hitting her with a flat, "not interested," and started to walk away. Zhang Lan was completely floored. She yelled at his retreating back, offering him his pick of any weapon in the whole shop if he'd just say yes. But all she got in return was crickets. She was absolutely fuming, thinking, who does this broke nobody think he is, turning me down? But right as she was about to blow a fuse, Su Ming came to a dead stop. He turned back, cool as a cucumber, and said, "Oh, is that right?" Then he pointed at the most ridiculously expensive weapon in the place and declared, "Fine. I'll take the Tyrant's Frostblade. You know, the display-only sword worth a cool 1 million advent coins." Zhang Lan's face went crimson. She was dead certain he was just trying to shake her down. She spat that he was just messing with her, asking if he really thought a peon like him was worth 1 million coins. Su Ming just shrugged. "You said times any times weapon." He laid it out plain and simple. If she was going to backpedal on her offer, then the deal was off. With a cocky grin, he even offered her a bit of free advice. "Tell your sister to start grinding. And grinding hard," basically saying that some things can't be bought with daddy's money. And weirdly enough, Zhang Lan's rage just evaporated. In its place, a curious little smirk appeared. She actually found Su Ming interesting and had to admit she'd come on way too strong. Without another word, she and her entourage just turned and left. The crowd was just gawking, whispering about how some random student just played the big shots from the Zheng H group like a fiddle. Right as they were clearing out, Su Ming's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced down to see it was from Ren Xiaoman. The text was identical to the one from his past life. It started with, "Have you always had a crush on me?" Then came the claim that she'd supposedly had a change of heart, and wrapped up by asking him to meet her on the roof of the academic building that night. Su Ming thought with a cold smirk that even though he hadn't awakened as the Godslayer this time around, so, Ren Xian was still playing the same old manipulative games. Recalling his promise of payback, he shot back a quick message agreeing to meet. And with that nonsense handled, Su Ming got back to the real priority, finding himself a weapon. He spotted a shop assistant and strolled over to ask about a display of jagged, rock-like things called sword stones. The clerk explained they were basically weapon loot boxes, with a tiny chance of spitting out a silver rank weapon. But she made sure to warn him that it was all pure luck, and 99% of the time, they just contained the absolute lowest grade trash. To her complete shock, Su Ming just grinned and said that's exactly what he was looking for. He explained that dropping a ton of cash on a silver weapon that would be outdated soon was a sucker's move. It made way more sense to roll the dice on a cheap stone and hope to hit the jackpot. Of course, as he glanced over the stones, he smirked to himself, knowing that for him, this wasn't a gamble at all. The secret was, he could literally see the item stats inside the stones. This little cheat code was another perk he'd carried over from his past life, the Eye of Insight. A system notification popped up, detailing how this legendary skill let his eyes perceive the true essence of all things. Using this hack, he confidently snatched up one of the stones from the pile. He knew that a normal silver weapon would run him hundreds, if not thousands, of advent coins. But using his skill to fish one out of a bargain bin stone? Now that was a 5-star deal for a broke student like him. As Su Ming sat down with his chosen weapon stone, his actions started drawing the attention of some other students, particularly a loudmouth with blonde hair. The guy recognized him as the same dude who just told the powerful Jong-un group to take a hike. The blonde and his 2 lackeys sauntered over to Su Ming, sneering as the leader mocked him for clutching a piece of trash. He cackled at the thought of Su Ming turning down a golden opportunity, a free handout from a major guild, all to gamble on a worthless piece of junk. They all started calling Su Ming a moron. He, however, couldn't have cared less. He recognized the blonde punk instantly as Yang Ding, a spoiled rich brat from his past life who got his thrills from messing with the newbies. Deciding this whole scene was a total pain, Suming figured he might as well have a little fun with them. He calmly looked Yang Ding in the eye and proposed a little bet for 5,000 advent coins, claiming he could pull a silver rank weapon right out of the stone he was holding. After a second of pure, dumbfounded silence, Yang Ding and his buddies absolutely erupted into hysterical laughter. Yang Ding scoffed, absolutely convinced Suming was a total moron. He sneered that there was a 99.9 to 9% chance that rock was pure junk, adding he'd never seen a bigger idiot so desperate to burn cash. Suming just smirked and shot back, "We'll see who's really wasting their money in a minute. Hook, line, and sinker." Yang Ding jumped at the bet, and a crowd started forming to watch the show. Suming announced he was cracking it open right here, right now, and told the loudmouth not to even think about chickening out. Yang Ding just cackled, telling him to start worrying about the 5,000 coins he was about to lose. With all eyes on him, Suming casually activated his Eye of Insight. His vision warped for a second, revealing the brilliant crimson glow of the sword trapped inside the rock. With a cocky shout, he smashed the stone to pieces. An insane flash of red light exploded from the fragments as a beast of a sword shot out. Yang Ding, his goons, and the entire crowd just stood there, jaws on the floor, as Suming casually snatched the weapon out of the air. A system window popped up, giving him the deets on his new toy. A black iron crimson sword. It was a low-grade silver weapon with a sick special affix called Crimson Drinker, which let it slurp up monster blood to heal its owner. As everyone stood there completely dumbfounded, Suming gave his new blade a once-over, admiring what a fine piece of hardware it was. Then, a chilling thought crossed his mind. With a determined smirk, he realized this bad boy would be the perfect accessory for his date with Ren Xian later tonight. Meanwhile, Yang Ding and his crew were practically statues, completely short-circuiting. They couldn't process that Suming had actually pulled a silver rank weapon out of a random rock. Suming, twirling the sword, just casually remarked, "It's not half bad." He was especially digging the lifesteal, realizing he could probably ditch needing a healer for the next dungeon run. The system panel confirmed it, a silver rank black steel sword with a sweet plus 10% lifesteal. As Yang Ding's face went pale with panic, Suming leveled the blade right at him, reminding the chump that a bet's a bet. And the 5,000 advent coins were officially his. Utterly defeated, Yang Ding coughed up the cash, stomping away like a spoiled brat. He screamed that he'd never forget being clowned like this. Suming just advised him not to write checks, his skills couldn't cash in the future. The shop assistant was just staring, completely blown away, realizing it had been years since anyone got anything but a paperweight from those stones. With his fresh winnings, Suming strolled back to the counter for a scabbard, casually asking if 5,000 coins would even cover it. The flustered assistant sputtered that it was more than enough. He copped a flashy, gold-trimmed silver-rank scabbard that cut weapon durability loss by a whopping 50%. Suming was feeling pretty smug, knowing this would keep his new sword from getting all beat up. The moment he held his sheathed sword, a system notification pinged him. It was asking if he wanted to pop the hidden function called Weapon Manifestation. He decided against it with a smirk, thinking it wasn't time to show all his cards just yet. He figured he still needed to take this new toy out for a spin and grind its rank up. Later, while taking a walk through a park, Suming mulled over his current situation. He had to admit, for a guy who just awakened as the sword god, he was rocking exactly 0 usable class skills. However, his class came packed with an absolutely busted primal talent, Universal Ascension. This slick little talent let him upgrade the quality of any item exactly one time. That was the secret sauce that made his mythic class actually worth the title. Gripping his sword, he decided to give it a test run. A system notification chimed in. Universal Ascension was a go. The upgrade was a success, and he'd unlocked the Crimson Drinker effect. The sword immediately began to thrum with a wicked red aura. A final pop-up displayed the weapon's sick new stats. A high silver rank crimson black steel sword. Its Crimson Drinker ability was now buffed to literally siphon the target's life force on contact. And to top it off, it gained a brand new skill, Bloodthirst. It granted a temporary +5 boost to all his stats for 30 seconds right after he offed a monster. Suming was more than pleased with his new and improved gear. With his prep work done, he finally activated the hidden weapon manifestation, totally confident that tomorrow's beginner dungeon was going to be a complete joke. Later that night, Suming found himself on the rooftop of the academic building. He stood there, a sharp silhouette against the neon-drenched futuristic city. His new sword was in his hand, and wouldn't you know it, Ren Xian was already there. She turned with a seductive smile and greeted him, playfully scolding him for showing up late. That smile evaporated in an instant. Without a word, Suming swung his sword right at her face. She screamed, barely scrambling out of the way, as the blade chewed into the concrete ledge she'd just been leaning on. She stared in total disbelief, demanding to know what he was playing at. With a gaze as cold as steel, Suming told her he was there to collect a debt. A nasty little flashback hit him right in the feels. You know, the one where he dies, clutching a fading Ji Yao, while Ren Xian basically watched with a bag of popcorn. Ren Xian was completely bugging out. "What in the world are you even on about?" she screeched. Waving her phone in his face, she was like, "Dude, I literally just said yes to you." She shoved the screen at him, showing the receipts where he'd spilled his guts, and asked her to be his girl. "You're the one who begged to date me," she shrieked, totally losing her cool. She just couldn't compute why he was suddenly trying to emotionally gut her. But Suming just stood there, face like a stone wall. He gave her this icy, unimpressed stare. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched into a smirk that just screamed, "I know something you don't." "Oh, you're right about the confession," he purred. That was from a past life, though. And just like that, his mind hit the rewind button. He saw the whole cringy highlight reel. Yeah, she was Miss Popular, the queen bee of the entire school. And he was just some lonely orphan kid. He remembered the day right after that first joke of an awakening ceremony. He was totally down in the dumps when she strolled up with that picture-perfect smile, asking, "Hey, you okay?" And bam, just like that, he thought someone actually gave a crap. Which led to that embarrassing text confession, all those sickeningly sweet dates, and, well, you know. But that whole bubble of happiness got popped by one little photo. Her and Jiang Tang, looking way too cozy. The ultimate backstab, caught on camera. Snapping back to the now, Suming's face twisted into a mask of pure disgust. "It was all a scam," he roared. He pointed a finger right at her, his voice dripping with fury. "I know all about your dirty little secrets with Jiang Tang. You were just playing me." Ren Xian looked like she'd seen a ghost. She started sputtering. That's crazy talk. You're making it all up." "Oh," but Suming wasn't even close to done. "Deep down, you know damn well if I'm lying," he sneered. "That whole perfect pretty princess act, it's all fake." He leaned in close, his voice a low, poisonous whisper. "The real you is just a shallow, two-faced snake." And with that, Ren Xian's mask didn't just crack, it absolutely disintegrated. Her face warped with pure rage as the real her came out to play. "What could you possibly know?" she shrieked, going straight for the low blow. "You're just an orphan." She spat the words like poison. "If you didn't have some speck of useful talent, you wouldn't even be worthy of breathing the same air as me." Then came the threats. "Just you wait. Me and Zhang Tong will make you regret ever crossing me." Suming just hit her with a smirk that basically said, "Is that all you got?" He pretty much dared her to try something, but then dropped the bomb that maybe she should worry more about her squeaky clean innocent maiden act taking a nosedive. That last jab was the final straw. She completely lost it, absolutely fuming, and went straight for the sword Suming had so conveniently left stuck in the concrete, swinging it right at his head. And as the blade came flying, Suming was just thinking, "Yep, classic her. Same old backstabbing move as my last life." But this time, oh, he was ready. Just as the sword was about to connect, these wicked-looking tendrils of red energy just exploded from the blade, freezing it dead in the air and leaving Ren Xiaoman's jaw on the floor. Suming was like, "You really think I didn't see that coming? I know you've got a thing for stabbing people in the back." A system notification popped up, confirming his weapon's Crimson Drinker ability was now active. The red energy tendrils shot out from the sword and coiled around Ren Xiaoman like snakes. Suming laid out his master plan. The second he locked onto her with his weapon's skill, it was game over. A tendril lashed out, smacking her right across the face. She let out a blood-curdling shriek, wailing about how he'd ruined her precious face. While she was collapsing into a heap on the floor, Suming stood over her and coldly reminded her, "You did this to yourself." He was just about to monologue about his epic revenge starting now, but she just had to interrupt. Screaming that she was going to get Zhang Tong to end him, Suming, completely unfazed, just recalled his sword, which poofed right into his inventory. Then he just turned his back and started walking away, telling her to go run and tell Zhang Tong to come and get some whenever he felt lucky. He announced that today's little love tap was their official breakup. As he left her bawling her eyes out on the rooftop, He figured that blade didn't just cut her, it cut away the last bit of affection he ever had for her. A little while later, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a care package from the academy, with a message from Principal Wang himself. The principal was congratulating him on his awakening and hooking him up with a starter pack for the beginner dungeon. The package was loaded. It held one fortification pill, a full combat gear package, and a sweet 10,000 advent coins.